Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that the money in your wallet is worth half of what it was yesterday, and the next day it's worth even less. That was the reality for millions of people in Germany during the early 1920s, in what is now known as the hyperinflation of the Weimar Republic, a time when money practically stopped having meaning. After World War I, Germany was left defeated, politically unstable, and burdened with massive war reparations. The new democratic government, called the Weimar Republic, struggled to pay its debts. Instead of raising enough taxes or cutting spending, the government turned to printing more and more paper money to cover its expenses. At first, it seemed like an easy solution, but soon prices began rising faster and faster, and the value of the German mark started falling like a stone. By 1922 and 1923, inflation had become hyperinflation, meaning prices were not just rising, they were exploding. Workers were paid not once a month, but sometimes twice a day, because if they waited until evening to spend their wages, that money would already be worth less than it was at noon. People rushed to shops the moment they were paid, desperately trying to buy food or basic goods before prices increased again. The numbers became almost unbelievable. A loaf of bread that once cost a few marks skyrocketed to thousands, then millions, then billions. Eventually, prices were measured in the trillions. Money lost its meaning as a symbol of value and became just paper, sometimes literally more useful as wallpaper or kindling than as currency. Children played with stacks of banknotes as toys. People carried wages in suitcases or wheelbarrows, and yet that mountain of money often couldn't buy enough food to feed a family. Ordinary life collapsed. Savings that people had built over decades vanished in days. Those who had worked hard and lived responsibly suddenly found themselves with nothing. Pensioners, widows, small business owners, many lost everything. It was as if time itself had betrayed them. Yesterday's fortune became today's pocket change. Bartering began to replace money. Farmers sometimes refused to accept cash altogether, demanding goods or foreign currency instead. Some people paid their rent with food, shoes, or furniture. Trust in the government and the banking system evaporated. The very idea of financial stability seemed like a joke. Meanwhile, those who owned real assets, land, factories, or foreign currency, sometimes benefited. They could repay debts with worthless paper money. But the vast majority of citizens were trapped in fear and uncertainty. Society grew angry, resentful, and divided. Political extremists took advantage of this chaos, promising strong leadership, simple answers, and someone to blame. And blame was everywhere. Some blamed the government, some blamed foreign powers, others blamed groups within society. The sense of desperation and injustice created a dangerous environment where radical ideas could grow, ideas that would later shape the darkest chapters of German history. By late 1923, the Weimar government finally took drastic action. A new currency was introduced, the Rentenmark, and printing was halted. Strict financial controls were imposed, and international agreements helped stabilize the economy. Slowly, confidence returned, and prices stopped spiraling, but the damage had already been done. The psychological scars of hyperinflation were deep. An entire generation had learned that money could suddenly become worthless, that savings could evaporate overnight, and that governments could fail to protect their citizens. This fear of inflation would influence German economic policy for decades to come. The story of the Weimar hyperinflation is more than just a tale of numbers or economics. It is a human story about anxiety, uncertainty, and the fragile trust that holds a society together. When that trust is broken, when money stops working as a promise of value, everyday life can fall apart shockingly fast. And perhaps the most haunting lesson is this: hyperinflation didn't begin with chaos. It began with small decisions, justified at the time, that slowly spiraled out of control. It reminds us how powerful and fragile economic systems really are, and how closely they are tied to the stability of a nation and the lives of ordinary people.